Hey, I hope everyone is having a great night. And I have to turn off the sound on my monitor. There we go. So a little bit different than last time. I've got a PC. I've actually got my work laptop set up so I can monitor the stream, make sure everything's looking good. Because I've got a little bit of a different setup. If you watched last week's video, I had a 2-camera setup, which was the overhead cam. Hi. That just kind of looked funny. Which is my GoPro. I've got my main face cam, which is my Canon. And then I decided I really wanted another angle for painting and stuff that I thought would be helpful. So what I've got tonight is I've also got my cell phone acting as an additional camera. So if you are watching this after the fact or watching it now, let me know in the comments or in the chat what you think about the third camera, if you think it's overkill, whatever. I'm still kind of figuring out how I want this to go. I am starting 10 minutes early, which I guess is not normal for people who stream on YouTube. Everyone seems to be running late. I'm starting early. So, yeah. Just a quick thought before we hear. So for anyone who's watching this, I'm going to be working on the Space Hulk Blood Angel Terminators. And you can see I've got 6 of the Blood Angel Terminators stacked up here, as well as this extra miniature. And we'll talk about that in a second. And some paint that we're going to be applying tonight. I'm going to go for, I don't know, up to 2 hours. If chat is quiet and there's not a lot of people hanging out, I'll probably call it after about an hour. But otherwise, we'll see how this goes. If you're new here, just checking it out, I'd ask that you throw a like or a comment in the video. Just let me know what you thought. I'm always open to constructive criticism. I know it's the internet, and asking for criticism is dangerous thing, but if I don't get any feedback, I can't get better and provide you with content that you actually want to see. Also, if you enjoy what you see, think about giving it a subscribe and clicking that notification bell. I'm a small channel, hoping to grow to a point where, you know, maybe I can actually get like a custom URL. I need 100 followers for that, 100 subscribers for that. Not a big ask. There's 48 of you right now. And if it ever became monetized, even cooler. But at any rate, tonight, and what the purpose of these paint nights are, hobby nights are, is A, getting my butt back into the painting chair, getting a brush in my hand and putting paint on miniatures. The other one is to provide people a bit of an outlet, a place to hang out while they're doing their painting things. So if you are watching this after the fact along while you're painting, or deciding to paint along live with me, that's awesome. That's really kind of the gist of this. Just, you know, chill, paint. If you've got questions, I've got the chat right ahead of me so I can see what you guys are asking. I've also got it listed along the side over right above me. Yeah, it's right above me is the YouTube chat. Only streaming on YouTube this week. Just gonna try doing just YouTube for a while, and I may go back to doing YouTube and Twitch maybe in March. Just give it 3 weeks or 3 sessions just on YouTube. But what we are doing is, so I've got this miniature, which is the it's a Primaris miniature, I believe. So it looks bigger than a normal Marine, but obviously not in Terminator armor. So I built this one. This is one of the random minis from the first series. I built this guy and primed him the same as the Blood Angels because I haven't done Blood Angels before. And I always think it's a good idea to do a test model, either in its entirety or at least just before you go on to the next step. So, you know, I'm going to lay down the base color on all these guys, and then I'm going to go ahead and when that's drying, because I'm going to be using a contrast paint, so it takes a little bit of time to dry, Once that's done, then I'll go on and figure out what the next best step on this guy is. And I've got a couple of thoughts, and I'll probably talk my thoughts through, just so you can kind of see my process on how I decide to paint a model. Generally speaking, I do deepest to tallest is kind of my thought. So the armor is everywhere, and it is right at the base of him. And then I would do next things potentially would be like the holsters, belts, grenades, pouches, and then finish with things like the chest eagle. Any detailing I'm going to do on the backpack I'll do last, because I do have a bad habit. It's better with the paint handles, but I've had a bad habit in the past of bracing the backpack with my finger. I've painted a lot of Space Marines in my time, and so bracing the backpack can lead to obviously having the paint wipe off. So I usually leave the backpack to last. So the plan with the miniatures is to use the Flesh Tearers contrast paint. Always give your paints a good shake first. Now, I use Citadel paints because that is what my favorite local hobby store carried. It's what I'm used to. I know that people have all sorts of love-hate relationships with all of the different paints that are on the market. I honestly don't believe there is a perfect paint. I believe there is the right paint for you. That being said, I have a thought. So my buddy Matt, who used to run my favorite local gaming store, gave me, I actually have one here, a bunch of these Space Marine Heroes to auction off for Extra Life, which I auctioned off 2 out of the 6 I was able to sell off to people and earn money for Extra Life charity this last winter. Now I still have 4 left, and I'm going to chat with him about it, but one of the thoughts that I had was, if I don't auction them off or give them back to him or whatever we do, is they would be a really good tool for trying different paints. Now, I'm not talking about just like I'm doing here, where I'm testing a paint thing, but actually taking the recommended colors, because there's I don't know what's on the box here. No. But I'd go to GW's website, get the recommended paints for the Nurgle Marines from Citadel, and then get their equivalents from at least 2. And the 2 that I'm thinking, of course, are Vallejo and Army Painter. So get the equivalent paints from those 2 lines, and then paint all 3 of the miniatures using the same general techniques. So a base layer, and then a wash of some sort, and some highlights. Just really the basic techniques, like the techniques that you would teach your first time hobby buddy how to paint, right? Nothing fancy. We're not going to go into non-metal metallics. Not a vein I've dipped into. Something I might do down the line. But basically, for your average hobbyist, does your paint brand matter? Like, if you can get the colors you want, and they are providing you you have access to them, regular access to them, then does it really matter? Or is it just personal preference? Like, I know GW Citadel paints are more expensive than the others. That's just like the given. And their paint pots are not my favorite. Like, realistically, I had Laser Quill do up custom paint racks to fit these, because most of the other paint racks that actually hold the Citadel paint suck. So those are cool, and I've got those for storing my collection. But realistically, I don't know that I'm married to them. That being said, I will probably never give up my my contrast paints. And I mean, this guy here is a really good example why. This is one coat with a little bit of touch-ups on the shoulder pads and the greaves of the Flesh Tearers red. So it's done a really great job. It doesn't come across great in that video. I don't know if it shows up better here. But it's pretty vibrant where you want it to be. It's got some recess. Like, seriously, if you were rushing down the line on this and just trying to get a bunch of table-ready Marines going, and I was doing, like, honestly, red is one of those most difficult of colors to do. I do the contrast Flesh Terrors red, and just, I could probably knock a squad of these out in a night if I wasn't going detailed. Like, seriously, this hit the holsters and the pouches with a little bit of brown and a wash. Same with the belt. Chest Eagle with a wash. And I didn't turn the notifications off on my phone, so we might get some notifications as we go through this. Chest Eagle, probably color and then some highlights, and the eyes and the bolter. And seriously, like, you're done this dude and his 9 squad mates in probably an hour and a half, 2 hours, plus dry time, right? So you're sitting at your table, you put your contrast paints down, and depending on how fast you are, you may wind up walking away for half hour, 40 minutes before you do the next step. That is the only downside, which is really not much of a downside, if you ask me, to the contrast paints, is you do have a bit more working time. But seriously, like, I covered this guy pretty quick. We'll see how quick I do these guys. I do have, like, the entire squad of the Blood Angels, so if I get through all these guys pretty quick and chat winds up blowing up, I can keep going. But otherwise, I'm expecting I'll get these 6 guys done pretty easy. It takes about 10 minutes probably to do these guys well. Maybe not quite that long. My tools as I do this, just to kind of go over this, I've got a palette. Now, this is just some foam core, some high quality foam core with a nice shiny side. I do also have like a regular GW palette. Really, any plastic palette will do. I always think that's a good idea. I don't use one for these. I'll take this right out of the bottle, being horrible and risking my lovely custom desk mat. But, you know, gotta be brave. Other colors, I haven't decided exactly. Like I said, I haven't decided the next step. It will either be highlight or wash or work on some of the other bits, like the bolter or some of the webbing and stuff. I have not 100% come up with that, so I just grabbed the paints that I would need for the likely pieces that I would follow up on. So I've got some Fiston Red and Evil Sun Scarlet. I haven't figured out. This is the more likely what I'll use for a little bit of a highlight. I know it's a base color, but realistically, you thin it down, it works the same as the others. Mechanicus Standard Gray, and Eshin Gray, along with some Abaddon Black, for the various hardware on him. I'm thinking instead of going brown, I might actually go gray with some of that, and I'm not sure how much of it exists on each of the Terminators. They have a lot of other details going on, but we'll take a look at that. I've got an array of brushes that you can see over here. I think it'll show up, yeah. In my brush case. Not my favorite piece, actually, this brush case. It was a great idea that just kind of didn't work out the way I'd hoped. I have a brush case 2.0 on the way. You may also notice here holding my Terminators is on their paint handles, because I'm addicted to these things, is a little paint handle holder that I made out of foam core. I've got a video on that is on the way. That'll probably be in February. That'll go up. Show you how to whip one of those together pretty quick out of foam core. And the pattern will really let you make it out of whatever, because I also have a chunk of 1/8 inch ply that would work really well for this. 2 water pots. I subscribe to the 2 water pot system, so 1 main one and then 1 for the secondary clean. So you clean your brush off, you wipe it off on your paper towel, which I have over here. You can see it's still red from when I cleaned it off from doing the other guy, and then a second rinse in there, wipe it off, then a little bit more water, and then when you're done at the end of the night, your brush cleaner. to keep your brush clean. This will keep your brushes alive a lot longer. Water to stay hydrated, and all y'all to hang out with while I work on this. So let's give this a good shake. And then we're just going to crack it open. Another little doodad that I want to do. Now what I am going to do is I am going to rest this on the palette because I think it's just smart. Get some paint on there. It's a little bit more than I want. I will use the palette to control my paint a bit. That's the cat. All right. And this is not really going to be anything special. I'm using a large Citadel large brush and just applying liberally to the Terminator. Now, this isn't I don't find this is necessarily a too thin coat sort of situation. The cat is upset because someone is in the bathroom and she's not there with them. And I'm also not paying attention to her because I'm hanging out with you guys. Anyway, and now she's scratching at the carpet. Karis, no. With the contrast paints, you put it on pretty liberal and not worry about it. Now, I do use the, what is it called? You can see it in the background over there, probably the Gray Sear contrast primer. I like it because it's a nice light primer. Goes on nice. And it levels nicely. I found it was really nice to operate in the winter here. It is in British Columbia, where I am. It is as winter as it gets sometimes here. It looks bloody. That's looking good. And that can sometimes mean that your paints don't come out nice from the aerosol can. Primarily, my understanding, and I am not a scientist, and I have not really done the experimentation to say definitively the cause, but I believe when it's cold, the particles just, because of the suspension in the aerosol, they are more inclined to freeze. I am going to hit this whole storm shield here. I'm not overly worried if I get it because it'll get a good wash and covering with other colors down the road, but I want to make sure I get the edges. I haven't decided entirely the paint scheme, which is not normally how I would approach this. I'm kind of working through the process as I do this. Partly because I think people don't know how to work through the process. I've walked a number of people through their first couple of miniatures, and they're like, that's like one of those things. I don't know what color to paint it. And sometimes it doesn't matter for your first minis. Like, honestly, just get paint on it. Figure out what you like, what you don't like. It's like, if you've never had pizza before and someone says, what do you want on your pizza? How the hell do you answer that? Like, that's just, I don't know what color to paint my miniature. I mean, you can use the guide. I am a firm believer that a good place to start is the books. And I have the paint guide for the Blood Angel. Well, not for the Blood Angel. I have the GW paint guide. And it has Blood Angels in it. Wow, that's... which is lovely. But you really can go however you want. And if your first miniature isn't a Games Workshop miniature, or maybe your first miniature, maybe you're watching this because you don't really give a tinker's cuss about Blood Angels or the grim darkness of the far future, you want to paint a model starship you've got. You've got yourself a replica of the Enterprise you want to paint, you know? How do I do that? What do other people do when they're painting things? I mean, is a Space Marine the Enterprise? No. Although that'd be an interesting thought. You know, but what, it just comes out like blood on that first dip when it comes fresh from the pot, which is the devil. I know people are like, I'm sure people are yelling at the screens, oh my god, you don't know what you're doing, you're ruining the model. You just got to work it. Like, that's one of the things with the contrast paints, in my experience with them, is you work it. You work it. It's not bread. It's not going to get too gluteny or some crap like that. I will try to keep my language clean for the YouTube censors, but I may drop a little bit of adult language from time to time when I'm painting, especially if I flub up. Now, this brush is nice to get big areas, and it carries a good amount of paint, but it does suck at doing some of the fine pieces. And that's why you have multiple brushes, why you don't have one brush. You've got a lot of brushes. A little bit on tools and why I wash my brushes. Even my, as some people might say, your GW brushes suck. I mean, I've used, don't think I've got any in there right now. I have in my brush collection, because I don't really get rid of brushes until they're right useless, and the brushes have to be pretty bad for them to be right useless. Is not even like a dry brusher or for stippling or stuff like that. But I've got some really nice German miniature painter brushes that I paid considerably more for. And honestly, I mean, if you really want to go cray, I mean, you can go nuts. I've used for some medieval painting, some medieval illumination stuff, like a single brush that cost me $100. Winsor Newton Series 7 Sable Hair brush. Can't remember what number it was, but it was like that thing when I was foolish and like, well, if I'm going to do this thing, then I want to have the best tools. You know what? The tools are not 100%. I mean, don't get me wrong. Dollar store brushes are the devil. 100%. Don't use them. You know what they're good for? They're good for glue. I've got some in my drawer specifically for glue work. Applying PVA glue, watered down PVA glue. That is what your dollar store brushes are good for. For the most part, if you take care of your tools, then blaming them for a bad paint job is garbage. If you don't take care of your tools, then it's extra garbage. You really don't get to say that your brushes wrecked your model if you didn't take care of your brush. So what I'm going to do is between each mini, I'm going to clean the brush out. I'm not going to go all the way into the... I just want to make sure that I don't wind up working paint up into the ferrule of the brush. Up into here. Like, realistically, I don't want paint coming past, like, that bottom. Like, I want a good, 3 millimeters there of the brush from the, where it meets the collar here, up to here. I really don't want any paint in there at all. Like, that's just bad mojo. Now, this was basically a brand new brush when I started with it, because I just picked up a bunch of brushes. I always, I am going to give this a bit of a wash in the clean water. If I was using metallics, I'd actually have a third bath. I'd have a third pot of water for metallics alone. And you'll notice there's no metallics here on the table. Because, no, that's just not how that goes. So swap that out. So yeah, that is some of my general painting philosophy. Water for the painter is also important. As a rule, Water is important. My goal is to not drink so much water that I need to run out partway through the stream to go pee. But also to drink enough water that I don't go to bed dehydrated at the end of the stream. Because that's a problem too. Now when you're painting miniatures, there are a lot of schools of thought. But one of the... there we go. One of the schools that I don't honestly, I don't adhere to any this is the way concept when it comes to painting miniatures. There's lots. I understand and have used all sorts of techniques. I've done the paint it on the sprue and assemble it. Not my favorite, but I understand why people do it. And that's generally because they want to get access to really small parts. And sometimes, like, when you've got lots of sub-assemblies, so, like, let's say you're assembling a Warhound Titan from Forge World, and you want to paint some of the interiors before you, fill your boots with that there's, like, logic there. But if you're trying to get the underside of some miniature's cloak for your, the 17th sergeant in your group, when you're going to put like 200 models on the table, that's a big bucket of nope. It's like, I've got a buddy, Kurt. He's awesome. He's honestly, he's taught me a lot about painting, and he's got a lot of patience for it. I don't know if he still does. He hasn't painted in a while. And if you were watching this, Kurt, no, I'm not calling you out. Check the chat. But this is a guy who painting 15 mil fit miniatures for Flames of War. So the older Flames of War stuff, when you've got like 15 millimeter base, has like 5 or 6 or 8 guys on it. And he's painting the lapel markings on a German lieutenant. Do you understand how small that is? Like, you need a magnifying glass to see it on the miniature. But he's like, no, like, the lapels are clear there. I can totally get it in there. That's a level of detail you don't have to go to. But you can. You are welcome to do what you want. There are very few things that I would say you shouldn't do when you're painting. Don't paint drunk. Doesn't mean you can't have a drink while you're painting. And I'm not saying don't paint drunk because, you might accidentally stay up all night painting your entire army. That'd actually be a good thing. Within reason, I guess. But, you might wind up with your Tyranids in, a hot pink color that you had not intended, but, it seemed like a really good idea when you were 5 old fashions in before you picked up a brush. Because I'm assuming that if you're painting 40k miniatures, you're classy AF, and you're not just getting hosed on Moosehead beer. See, while I won't criticize how you choose to paint your miniatures, I will criticize if you decide to spend copious amounts of money on crappy beer instead of buying like a nice 6-pack. If you don't think I will, I would have asked you to talk to my brother about it, because I gave him a crap all the time about that sort of thing back in the day. he would quite happily buy a 2-4-pack of whatever was cheap instead of like a 12-pack of something good. And I get it, you know. He was raising a family and wanted to save the pennies and still be able to have a couple of beer a night. But I'm like, what if you only had 1 beer a night instead of 2? Then he looked at me like I was purple. And I said, you do what you want to do. But do know that I will judge you for making poor beer choices. And I don't want to sound elitist, but, and I maybe do when I'm going to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. If you can only afford whatever, buy the best that you can get with that money. Don't buy by volume. Buy the best quality, because you'll enjoy it more, and especially if you're on a limited budget. That was something I learned in university. If I bought cheap whiskey, I did not enjoy it near as much as the good whiskey. And maybe it meant that I only had 1 bottle that I bought a year. And I drank less whiskey. Not that I ever drank a lot. But it meant that every time I had some, I enjoyed it and didn't have any regrets. And then I got older, and I thought, well, you know, I don't want to mix my good stuff, so I started buying cheap crap again for mix into soda, pop, Coke, Sprite, well, not so much Sprite, Coke, 7-Up, ginger ale, whatever. So I'd buy cheaper booze for mixing and have good booze to drink neat. And then one day I was out of the cheap stuff. And I'm like, well, you know, really want a rum and Coke. So let's put that really nice $60 a bottle rum into my Coke Zero. And I tell you what, that was the best damn rum and Coke I'd ever had. And then I started thinking, why am I buying the cheap swill? You know, $25. Now, don't get me wrong, I enjoy Kraken. It's fine. But if I'm buying rum from now on, because I mean, I've got a selection of Kraken I got to go through, because there was a period when I bought a lot of Kraken. But if I was buying rum to make rum and Cokes with now, I wouldn't buy Kraken. I'd buy a nice Diplomatico Reserve. My buddy Jerry's going, Jeebus, Jason, what are you doing wasting that rum? The simple reality is that I'm not going to drink rum and Coke. I stopped drinking that a while back. But if I were, that's how I would do. Because it tastes better. And if your goal is to have an enjoyable beverage and not get blind, stinking drunk, then drink better stuff. That being said, you can also layer it, as a buddy of mine, Sean, does. What he will do is the first 1, 2, maybe even 3 drinks a night, he will have his lovely, expensive scotch, which he's drinking neat, maybe with a bit of ice. But after his third one, for sure, if not the second, the good bottle goes away and a reasonable bottle comes out. So the good bottle is probably $80 to $120 bottle of scotch. Maybe he's splurging and he's got like a $200 bottle out there. But once that's done, then he goes to the $40 bottle of pretty reasonable Canadian whiskey. So let's say you go from maybe like an 18-year Lagavulin. I just totally butchered that. Trying to be fancy. and then switch to a bottle of 40 Creek. And maybe he get a nice bottle of 40 Creek, like a $40 or $50 bottle. And that's what he'll drink the rest of the night. Because he recognized that he's reached a point where he's not going to really notice the difference. Or not notice the difference enough that he's willing to continue to consume $180 a bottle of scotch. Or a $100 bottle of scotch. I'm not quite so discerning. If I'm going to tie one on, I'm going to tie one on with the good shit. I don't tie one on anymore. I find even if I have 2 or 3 drinks in the morning, if I'm not really diligent about my hydration, I will notice. It's not that I'm hungover. I have the semblance of recognizing the limitations of my aging person at that point, but it's not something I would overly worry about. All right, so this is a great model where we examine why some people build things off the frame. Like the last 2 weren't bad, but this guy's got this bit right in here. And these push to fit minis are beautiful. And honestly, I think I saw some. It's funny because someone else was painting these too. That's what happens when you go back and watch your own video, and then suddenly YouTube is recommending that you watch other videos where people are painting the most beautiful Blood Angel miniatures ever. Which are these ones apparently? And I have a feeling I missed a bunch, or is that just a bucket of parchment? No, just a bucket of parchment. So there's a bunch of detail here that I did not coat in red, that I could have, but I didn't. All right, let's grab this next guy and cycle him out. So over in the, just over there, other way, over there, up in the upper right-hand corner, you see the tail end of my paint rack there. It's super handy. Like I said, there's a video on it in the works. I'm aiming to get the video times around the 8 to 12 minute mark. My most recent one that went up, which was the Clan Invasion Kickstarter review video, that one was 16. There was about 2 minutes of footage I could have cut. I could have... Oh, Deadpool. Deadpool chicken, everybody. I could have cut the bit about the dice, because I didn't have the footage that I thought I did. I'd either not recorded it or lost it. So what I did is I recorded a bunch of B-roll, and then I recorded the commentary. I'd already determined, like, the commentary was more or less written. This is a really wet brush. I'm just going to actually... When you're painting like this, it's sometimes a good idea to give yourself a shake midway through. But anyway, recorded the commentary on the Kickstarter and had the bit about the dice and the pips and stuff, and they are sorting it out. I don't know what the solution's going to be, but I really nearly cut it. Like, it was totally cuttable, but I'm like, it is one of, like, honestly, for me, it's one of the biggest flaws with the Kickstarter, so I felt like skipping it was disingenuous to the goal of reviewing the Kickstarter, even if I didn't have the footage, and I really didn't. It was so late already, I didn't want to go back and shoot the footage. I even pulled the dice out with the intent to shoot the footage, and I'm like, it's fine. It's fine without it. But I really do think they're beautiful minis. And as soon as I figure out what paint scheme I want to do with any number of them, I'll probably throw some up here to paint. I'll do some on the live stream, and I'll probably do a couple more tutorial style, because I feel like battle mechs themselves have some unique pieces. And first I'll try some techniques, because there's some techniques that I've used on other miniatures that I think would work really well on them. So I don't know if any of you ever played a game called Crimson Sky, which was also by FASA, which was a great alternative history style game where air travel became the standard. So everyone had planes, was kind of the idea. And travel by Zeppelin, blimps was the way. We didn't have big commercial airliners. You traveled your big distances by blimp, and short intercommuter stuff might even be your own plane. But the idea is you have sky pirates, and it was just like this awesome concept. And the miniatures, for the most part, were up to the challenge of being awesome. Iron Wind Metals, I think, produced all of the miniatures that they did for that game. FASA never disrespected the concept that they had by doing crappy metal miniature or crappy plastic miniatures like they had done with BattleTech. Like, I get it, BattleTech, they wanted to have miniatures, they wanted to put miniatures, like, you know, I could totally see it. Like, they've got battle droids and it's awesome, and they've got cardboard punch outs, and then like Rogue Trader comes out and they've got like actual metal minis in the box, and you're like, oh crap, how do we compete with that? We don't have that backing. Like, we don't have that infrastructure to do that. Vinyl injection molding. Yeah, that's it. Vinyl injection molding. So that's what they wind up doing. And those models sucked. But they have a lot in common. The Crimson Skies miniatures and the BattleTech miniatures. The biggest thing is they're not organic shapes. So while there's lots of pieces in 40K that are armor, so you've got your dreadnoughts, and you've got your tanks, your flyers, your various bits. Most of them, Terminators here, dude in the armor, while they are armored pieces, they still have certain organic base, the meat inside. And I guess to some extent you could say the dreadnought, but it's built more like a tank. But as a result, the way these are painted, the way these are assembled, and the imagery that they're evoking is of organic movement. So yeah, so I will totally exclude dreadnoughts from this conversation. So the goal here is to evoke a dude doing that classic Wolverine schnickety schnick. Hey Jane, hey Abby, how is it going, girls? So yeah, we're trying to evoke the Wolverine bits here. So there's a certain way that these models are going to move. They're going to want to move, and they're going to position them, and even just the way the armor is constructed around here. Whereas that is awesome that you are fantastic. Just gonna clean my brush here. Awesome, Jane. I'm glad you are good. Just having a quiet night at home, are you? Checking in on your unkie? We should totally set up a video chat sometime. Seeing as we can't get together still for a while. Oh, missed the top of that. In there. Super cool. My niece is popping in. Saying hi. It's funny, I was talking about your dad a little bit earlier. I don't know if you guys were on for that. I do sure miss him. And Grammy. Alright. So I think I've got all of the red. Oh no. It's always that spot. So one thing with sometimes with these push to fit minis is there's some weird gaps. Thank you. Honestly, at this point, it's mostly just the paint I'm using. I'm using a really kind of a cheater paint a little bit because it gives lots of highlights and depth to the miniature just with one pass. So it's a bit of a cheat, but it speeds the process up for sure. What do you girls think about the way the cameras are set up? I haven't gotten any feedback from anyone else on that, so I would love to hear what you think about the camera placement, if you can see things good. That's good. See, like I said to everyone else, maybe the one in the corner should go on the inside. Yeah, I was thinking that too. It might just be the wrong spot. It's a new camera angle that I'm trying tonight. It's just my phone, actually. So I just need to set it up on the other side, which wouldn't be too difficult because it's the only one that actually doesn't need a wire. But yeah, totally have a conversation, even with people who are not my family who jump into chat. Just saying for anyone else out there who pops by any of my live streams. Which, as a reminder, I also stream World of Tanks on Twitch Sunday nights starting around 7:30. If you are interested in that sort of nonsense. And by nonsense, it's basically me and some of my clan buddies having a good time, shooting tanks, being tanks, tanky tank. Yeah, it seemed like a good idea to put it where I put it, but I'm noticing my hand is in the way a lot. Get up in there. So you girls working on any projects right now? Any crafts happening at home? In the hand. It's one thing with these miniatures sometimes is not really just school stuff, which is fair. That is a important focus. I always found it hard when I was in your ages, coming back after the Christmas break to get focused and buckle down. And I can only imagine it's harder for you with the way things are right now. Let's get some more on the back there. Oh, that's just way too much. Sometimes you put way too much garbage on you get way too much junk in there, and you got to wipe it off. So that's one of the nice things, again, even with the contrast paints that I'm using here, you can fix that flood pretty easy. I might go back and touch up that area if it winds up being a little too light, but at the end of the day, when I put a wash on this, which I haven't decided what color a wash I'm going to do. So part of me is thinking I'm going to do Nuln Oil, but I'm not sure yet. This is Citadel Paint from Games Workshop. For miniatures, it is what I have used for the better part of the last 25 years. Yeah, I'd say going back to 95 I've been using it. So Citadel brand. This particular one, close up and reshake this one, as I was saying, is sometimes useful. Citadel Color Contrast. This particular one is called Flesh Terrors Red. But yeah, so since I started with Games Workshop miniatures in 95-ish, I've been using GW paints. And I've tried dollar store paints, and they have their place for some things, like especially when you're doing big wumps of terrain. But for detail stuff, I will choose a good hobby paint. And as I was saying earlier, I don't really care if you're using Vallejo or Army Painter or GW. I think they're probably all equal, just different. But I'm going to do a video to explore that, because I think it's something that is not... It might be something other people have explored, but I haven't explored it, so it's a good journey of discovery for Jason. There we go. Get this last guy done, and I think once I get this guy down, I'm going to shade the backpack on my test miniature with the Nuln Oil to see if it gets too dark. Because if it does, I can always lighten it up some more contrast. And I'm not terribly concerned about the overall final look of the test miniature, because it's a test miniature. Probably putting a little... Contrast is still one of those things that I think is a little tricky. My instinct is that tells me I'm putting it on too thick, but I know from having looked at the finished miniature and even just looking at where those other ones are in their process of drying, that I'm not. You can put it on like a wash almost. And then it's just about how deep you want that color to be. So right inside there. Like the top of the chain fist fellow is looking a little light, so I can touch him up with a little bit more paint and get a little more depth in the color. So that's my goal for that one. And like I said, if I get these going now, before the next hobby night, which will be in 2 weeks, because that's every 2 weeks, I'll probably get the rest of the squad based in red and move on to the next detail bit, whatever that's going to be. And I'll go over my thought process on that. Because I said I'd work it out with you, but this is winding up taking about an hour to get these guys based. Partly because I'm taking some time to chat with the chat. Chat with the chat. Alright, so let's just grab this guy back out. Is it a problem? I don't think so. Let's just put a little bit. I've got some on the brush anyway. And this is one of the lovely bits with the contrast paints, is it's not hard to just touch it up. And you get a really good contrast, as the paint is called, obviously, between the ridges and the indented pieces. So let's just wash this brush. Wipe off most of this red. Get that off there. A little bit of water, there's no big deal. And then what I'll do is get a little bit of water. Just put that down there. Open up my brush cleaner. Just try to get through there a little bit. And then rinse it off. Now the nice thing about these paint pots that I'm using over here is they've got ridges on them, which help to work things like the paint soap, the brush soap through the brushes to keep the brushes clean. Alright, so now that one is done, let's grab another brush. Yep, I am a brush eater. I will lick the tips of my brushes. It's a bad habit. Don't do it. And don't use a drinking glass as a paint vessel. I mean, you only do it once. All right. So we can see already we have pretty dark contrast here around. Now, what I'm thinking is that if I use the Nuln Oil, or do I want to use a sepia? Let me just... I also have Reichland Flesh Shade. Well, you know what? Let's do this portion here with the Reichland Flesh Shade, and we'll do this portion over here with the Nuln Oil and see what we like. And that's one of the things that is great about having a test mini, is you can try it out. So now I'm not sure where this stuff is as far as thickness. I do use a palette for my washes most of the time. Give me a bit more control, but not all of the time. So that's going to give one level of look. And let's grab the Nuln Oil. Nuln Oil, we used to, the joke that we would say at the paint night sometimes at the game store I hung out at, Warcraft Games. It's got some green looking at it, but that's actually might be good. I think I'm going to use this one full force. So the joke was that knights, as in like Chaos Knights and the big war machines that whatnot, don't they're for noobs. So Nuln Oil, Jane, is a wash. So it's a lot thinner than the other paint that I was using. And so it seeps into all the cracks and crevices and gives extra depth to the miniature. So it's not actually an oil, it's just called Nuln Oil. That's the color of the paint. You know how like there's like 7,000 colors of white when you go to the hardware store to buy white, and there's like, you know, 3 different types of eggshell white and seafoam white and, you know, all the different white paints. This is just called Nuln Oil because it's a black wash. Oh no. So yeah. So we'll see how that goes. Because it's already a fairly deep shade, I don't know how much difference it's actually going to make on the miniature. I will definitely use some highlights, but I may not actually need to run a shade over these at all. I'll have to think about that and take a look at this mini over the next bit. What I am going to do, though, before I close it, is I'm going to I want to try something a little bit different with the bolter, since I've got the miniature out here. And I'm going to use some Eschen Gray. Which is a lovely color. I actually really like this color. A little water with it. Get thin down. And because this is not a contrast paint, it is going to be in 2 thin coats, most likely. It's a layer paint. But I'm going to try doing the bolters a little more like a non-metallic metal. I always imagine like ceramite, which is what the armor is mostly made of, but the bolters, I don't know if they're steel or what. But I think just doing black is boring. I'm kind of done with black bolters. And the never really liked the metallic bolters. I mean, I've done black bolters with metallic dry brush to give them that kind of worn, you know, seen centuries of warfare look. But I'm wondering about the possibility of the Eschen Gray with the black shade over top. If that's going to give me a suitable look. Because I think it could. I really do think that it'll be good. I'm way over applying it there. So I'm going to have to let that sit now. I'll give it the wash tomorrow. But I think that's probably going to be it for tonight. Let's do this bolter mag while I'm at it. Probably going to leave it with that. I thought I was going to have a clear decision on the wash that would go over the red, but I don't know that for sure. So as a result, I'm just going to have to do some more testing on this miniature and see what I want to do with it. Plus, I can get the other ones all caught up. I got my brushes from the game store, but they can be bought online as well. For anyone who wants to know, I mean, Abby and Jane, you guys know how to get a hold of me outside of my YouTube stream if you guys want to talk paintbrushes. And I can help you guys pick some. And if you are not my nieces and want to ask me questions, you can check out the All About the Geek Facebook page and post there. You can post comments in the down below for this video, and I will happily talk about brushes and where you can get them and the ones I recommend. But until next week, not next week, 2 weeks, every 2 weeks. This is an every 2 week thing. And I'm licking my brush again. It is a nasty habit. Don't do it. Let's wash it. Yes. So until next time, I just want to remind you all to work your wonk, have fun doing what you do, wash your hands, wear your masks, and as always, please remember to keep it